Hey everybody, I'm Carl Lanning, Brazos River Charter School with This Week in History, specifically the week of December the 13th through 19th. So, to start off with, we have a book by Mr. Winston Churchill. See, on December 13th of 1931, Churchill was on a speaking tour of the United States trying to sell this particular book. Now, this was going to be a challenge. It wasn't the writing or the speaking. He was quite good at both. He actually won a Nobel Prize in Literature. And speaking, well, he was quite good at that. This was prohibition in the United States. And he did like his drink. Typically, a daily intake on an average day would be 2 bottles of champagne, 1 bottle with lunch, another one with dinner. He would start off the day with sherry with his breakfast. Then he would sip on 4 scotch and sodas throughout the day and have brandy after dinner. So prohibition was going to be a little bit of a challenge for Mr. Churchill. On the 13th of 1931, though, he was running late for a dinner party, got out of a cab on 5th Avenue in New York City, and made a very typical British pedestrian mistake. He looked the wrong way when he was crossing the street and ended up being struck by a car. He suffered a cut scalp, a broken nose, and 2 cracked ribs. Now, after being mended, he met with his doctor, and his doctor wrote him a prescription for medicinal alcohol. That was one of the ways that you could actually get a legal drink during Prohibition. Now, the states actually that the quantity is indefinite, but the minimum would be the equivalent of about 6 shots of liquor per day. So Churchill was able to stay well lubricated for his stay in the United States. Now, he was afraid that the man who hit him, who was out of work at the time, would have a hard time finding a job. And so Churchill did meet with him, gave him a signed copy of his book. It was a big press event, and he made sure the press understood that the accident was entirely his fault, not the driver's. And by the way, one of my favorite quotes talking about drink was that Winston once said, "I have taken more from alcohol than it has taken from me." So, Winston Churchill and his prescription for alcohol. Well, I mentioned to you that last week we would talk about the warm story behind some of these wonderful little fairy tales. Well, the reason why is because this is Wilhelm Grimm of the Brothers Grimm. On December 16th of 1859, Wilhelm Grimm died. Now, of course, the Brothers Grimm, famous for their collection of fairy tales, over 200 different stories that was published in 2 volumes. However, the original versions are a little bit different from the various Disney treatments, etc. So, to start with, we'll start with Cinderella. Well, the stepsisters, of course, as part of the story, they try to fit their feet into the slipper. Well, in order to do so, one of them cuts off her toes, the other one cuts off her heel, and they end up both having their eyes pecked out by doves and have to live the rest of their lives as blind beggars. So, happy ending. Then we get to Snow White. Now, Snow White, the queen, of course, was also her mother, does ask a hunter to take her out into the woods and to kill her, but she also tells him she wants him to bring back her lungs and liver so that she can eat them. The huntsman can't do this, so he kills a hog and brings those back to her. There are 3 other attempts to kill Snow White. Eventually, she does marry the prince, and she is invited to the wedding, where she is forced to wear red-hot, burning iron shoes and dance until she drops dead. Another happy ending there. Then we get to Little Red Riding Hood. Well, this one actually was a little difficult because there are a lot of different old versions of this, and some of them are, let's say, beyond rated R, a ways beyond. So this is actually one of the milder ones. When she arrives at grandmother's house, the wolf had already eaten Granny and was wearing her clothes. They sit down to the table, and the wolf has prepared a meal with some Granny leftovers, and so there's a little cannibalism in there. A brave lumberjack, though, does come in eventually and and kill the wolf, and Red Riding Hood falls out of his stomach alive. Like I said, that's actually one of the happier versions. I guess Grimm fairy tales might be a good title to put it. Anyway, the Grimm brothers did record many of the originals, but in later published volumes, they were touched up a bit for more ready publication and consumption by the public. So, Wilhelm Grimm. And then finally, on December the 14th of 1911, Mr. Roald Amundsen reached the South Pole. Now, Roald Amundsen had extensive experience in the Arctic. First man to do a lot of things. He was the first to drift the Northwest Passage from Alaska to Greenland. Literally, he allowed his ship to be caught in the pack ice, and for a couple of years just drifted with the ice. However, the experiences that he had in the far north with the Inuit Eskimo tribes was absolutely invaluable. You see, there was somebody else who was trying to reach the pole at the South Pole at the same time as Amundsen. An Englishman by the name of Mr. Robert Scott was on an expedition, except he took a little bit different tack. You see, Robert Scott decided to go kind of high-tech. He and his men were wearing the latest leather and wool blends to stay warm. They decided to bring Siberian ponies. They also brought these, what they called snow tractors, to help pull their, well, greatly overloaded sledges as well. The Siberian ponies sank into the snow. The sledges broke down almost immediately, and they ended up having to literally man-haul these sledges through the snow and ice. Amundsen instead went low-tech and applied what he had learned in the Arctic. He brought 100 Greenland sled dogs. His clothing was made out of seal, out of caribou, wolf, fox for various parts of it, because the Inuit taught him that when you layer these clothing, you have to do it in a certain way. That way you don't sweat, because if you start to sweat in those kind of temperatures, you will die. And so he learned all of this stuff. He learned how to run dogs. He pre-placed depots of food at various distances and for food and fuel for stoves, over 3,000 pounds of seal meat was waiting for him. The sledges themselves, they carried frozen blueberries and seal organs to ward off scurvy. Lack of vitamin C causes scurvy, and that's one of the things he learned, is that actually the fresh organs of ocean mammals are a quite good source of vitamin C. They also ate a number of their dogs on the way. I think they left with 52, they came back with 11. And that was actually the plan the entire way. As the sledges got lighter, they required fewer dogs. Fewer dogs meant fewer amount of food they had to carry for the dogs, so there you go. The journey itself was actually amazingly successful. 99 days out and back, covering 2,000 miles in stages. What they shot for was about 18 miles or so a day, then they would rest for 6 hours, and then do another 18 miles. The weather interrupted that from time to time, but that was the plan. This is actually them at the South Pole. By the way, they skied, and they found out that the speed the dogs pulled the sleds was almost exactly the same speed as a man would ski. So everything just worked out perfectly. It was a golden trip. Scott, however, it didn't turn out so well. When he arrived at the South Pole, he found this, along with a note attached saying that basically Amundsen had been there a month earlier. And so Scott and his men had to man-haul all their stuff back. Unfortunately, they didn't make it alive. So, Roald Amundsen, first man to make it to the South Pole. Well, that's all for this week. And as a matter of fact, I guess that's probably all, period. You see, I'm retiring. Educators will get that. Look, in my life, there have really only been two things that I have ever really wanted to do. I've done a lot of other things. There's only two of them I really wanted to do. One was teach history, and I've done that for 29 years, and hopefully I did some good. The other one, though, was to be in or on radio. And I have the opportunity to be on 95.5 KITS. Its call letters are KOME. Studios are located in Granbury. To do the morning show from 6 until 9. It's a lot of fun if you're able to pick us up or listen online, please tune us in. I think you'll enjoy the show. I want to learn the radio business. I want to learn programming and engineering and sales, the whole 9 yards. Something like that I've always been fascinated by. And I'm very, very fortunate, I guess, to have the opportunity in my lifetime to really do the 2 things that I ever really wanted to do professionally. So, by the way, on Mondays at 7:08 a.m., my alter ego, Professor Lipschitz, does This Week in History on the radio. So, just to let you know, a little self-promotion there. Anyway, I'm Carl Lanning. A very Merry Christmas to you all. I hope to see you on the radio.